Or to put that simply, we're going to deep dive into the adoption curve. The adoption curve is a sociological framework in which we look at how different demographics and various psychological characteristics react and adapt to new technology being integrated into the market. Or, more simply, it looks at people's willingness to adopt new technologies when they hit the market. The adoption curve categorizes this potential audience using a standardized bell curve ranging from innovators to laggards. When reading this chart, we work our way from left to right, starting with the innovators. Now, before I go too far, if you guys have any interest in business management, marketing, or financial operations, make sure you click that like button so you get updated as we post our videos on this channel daily. First, we have the innovators, making up just 2.5% of the population. These are the people who are the action takers, most often associated with extroverts, that are willing to take the risk of trying new technology as soon as it comes out. This group has a comparatively low fear of failure, making them the perfect audience for beta testing any new products. Next are the early adopters, making up a significantly larger portion at 13.5% of the population. This group has a track record of setting up standards for what they expect from a product before they are willing to take that jump. Their goal is to build a strong, positive relationship around the product before they actually take that leap of faith and become evangelized fans. What we see is that they are able to do it pretty quickly. In between early adopters and the next category, we have this invisible line called the chasm. Now, the chasm is incredibly important to understand the inner workings of the adoption cycle as a whole. We will touch base on this in a little bit. The first group on the other side of the chasm are known as the early majority. Now, this group uses logic, practical insights, and data from previous trials before they're willing to adopt a new technology. In 2006, we had a pretty intense competition for phone manufacturers. Companies like Nokia, BlackBerry, LG, Samsung were all lead competitors trying to get their fair share of the market. A lot of the iPhone users in 2010 started out using those very same phones. Once they saw the reviews and the feedback from the people that had already adopted the new technologies, it was a quick jump for them. That brings us to the late majority. The late majority, similar to the early majority, makes up an additional 34% of the overall market. What the late majority are looking for is validation data as to why this new technology is the best solution for them. The key difference here between the early majority and the late majority is their internal use of that data. While the early majority is using that information as a means to buy and a reason why, the late majority is using that as a last-ditch effort to avoid integrating to this new technology. Because of this internal battle, it makes sense that they are one of the hardest to convince and need concrete evidence before they're willing to take that jump. That brings us to the laggards. They are a completely unique bunch that is absolutely resistant to change at any scale, because they only adopt new technology once their former solution becomes obsolete. They also make up surprisingly 16% of the overall population. We see this ideology most common in the older generation, where they're trying to avoid working through the learning curve of having to understand new technology. As promised, we circle back to the chasm. The chasm is where new products are given incredible life or a quick and painful death. The challenge behind the chasm originates from the shifts in thinking that take place between the early adopters and the early majority. While the early adopters are eager to try this new technology and find ways to integrate it into their everyday life, the early majority needs some convincing. This group can be convinced or influenced in a number of ways, but they all have to be working simultaneously in order to get the most bang for your buck. Meeting a need, being 100% functional, no beta testing, no bugs. To successfully do this, you may need to break this larger audience into smaller subsections and identify the specific need that this technology will address for their personal interest. That leaves us wondering, what are some of the biggest challenges that you might face with each segment of the adoption curve? For the innovators, it is all about innovation. If there are no clear signs of innovation within this new product, in their mind, it's outdated technology. For the early adopters, they're looking to see if that product is underperforming on its promise and if that leaves any potential harm to their reputation as an individual. Early majority is all about validation. If there is not enough data or insight to back up the claims of this product or its value in the market, then it's not ready for adoption into the early majority. Now, while the late majority is still looking for data, they're looking at the data saying that there's room for skepticism. There's a lot of wiggle room in that data, which means there must not be enough concrete evidence to validate its position in the market. And this last one is incredibly important to understand with the laggards. Technology is the lowest priority of the laggards on the totem pole. When looking for strictly necessary upgrades to technology, their idea of proper technology is what closely aligns with the technology that they already know how to use. This typically leaves high-functioning, high-ticket technology out of the realm of possibility for them, unless it's given as a gift. Now that we know about the sections of the adoption curve and what are the challenges within those sections, we want to look at how can we create marketing around targeting each one of the individuals that fall into those categories. For innovators, it's pretty simple. Create epic products. Give them insider access, allow them to beta test or get samples in exchange for reviews or feedback on the product. The early adopters take just a little bit longer, where you've now had the chance to work through the bugs that were identified by working with those innovators. Because early adopters are so focused on that reputation, create strong press or exposure around that product offering. If you're going to be running paid ads, target those who follow innovators, industry leaders, and cutting-edge technology companies like Tesla, Ethereum, and IBM Watson. For the early majority, we want to be using that data we've collected from the previous two sections and creating a narrative about how this technology or product will fill a need in their life. For the late majority, we are going to use the exact same data that we used to get the early majority. However, we are going to work in an increasing amount of feedback and positive reviews from the supporters that we've had up until this point. Lastly, the laggards. And I hate to say this, but there is no amount of marketing necessary because, believe it or not, there is no amount of marketing that can grab this group's attention and convince them that this technology is the best solution for them. There's a high probability that they've already become familiar with the product due to the high level of exposure from the other categories. That simply was not enough to convince them that their current technology is not the best solution. Now, if you're interested in learning more about marketing to different demographics, identifying opportunities for innovation, or sales strategies that work, go ahead and click that subscribe button for more videos daily.